Hi guys, David Jennings here from melbourneseoservices.com, and I've just got a really interesting interview lined up for you today. It's with the author of a book that I've recently finished called Work the System, and it's the simple mechanics of making more and working less. It was a book, I suppose, that spoke really well to me, and the author, Sam Carpenter, so thanks Sam for taking the time. It's interesting because the story he goes through, I think, will speak to a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, because it's not too dissimilar to what a lot of people feel whether they're starting up their own business from scratch or whether or not they've taken over an existing business, because that's what Sam did. Sam took over an answering service business and was doing that 100-hour-a-week grind just to keep everything afloat, and pretty much just took it to the edge, his health, his business, everything. And then it was almost like there was a real key insight and breakthrough and of how important systems were. And I was just chatting with Sam just before we started the call, and we talked about how and why this book spoke to me. I think coming from the financial background and designing trading systems, which is a very mechanical approach to trading the market, with this idea that you're looking to remove the emotion that's normally involved in trading the market. Because if you've got a set of rules and procedures and systems that you follow, it's a bit more mechanical, and a lot of people get caught up in the emotion, and that's what sort of undoes their trading. And you could see the similarities with business and how people get really caught up. So maybe I'll just get Sam to tell you a little bit about the story, and then I want to dig in a little bit deeper for those who do read the book, and I definitely recommend that you do. I also want to find out a little bit more for you guys on how to take it that next step, because at the surface it seems quite simple, but I mean that's like a whole Einstein thing: make things as simple as they need to be, but not one bit simpler. So I'll pass it over to you, Sam, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about your story and what happened that got you to breaking point, and take us through the process.
Okay, first of all, and I will tell you quickly my story in a nutshell, but this is not 10 steps to follow to get to here, or 5 things to avoid. That's not what this is about at all. It's about looking at life differently. It's about a mechanical view of our everyday life. The hardware of our life, the mechanics, the people, but how life operates. And I'll work my way up to what that insight is and how it made such a difference in my life. But it all hinges on this changing of perception of life and how life operates. And it's not mystical, it's not esoteric, it's very mechanical and understandable and objective. But what happened was, and my story is, my first 50 years of my life were a hellacious nightmare. At 35, I bought a business, a telephone answering service, and actually I'm in my office here now in Bend, Oregon. And I've had it for 28 years, but the first 15 years were a nightmare. 100-hour work week, single custodial parent, because the business ruined my marriage. I allowed that to happen, I guess. But 100 hours a week, seriously, for a decade and a half. And my health went bad, everything went bad, and then I came to a place where I was going to miss a payroll and finally lose my business after a decade and a half of doing everything. I could fix a computer, I could get a loan at the bank, I could hire somebody, I could fire somebody, I could do a great sales presentation. I could do everything, but I was going to lose it all and be a 50-year-old single guy with nothing to do. I didn't know where to go, and the kids are in college by this time. But what happened was, one night I realized I was going to lose the company. I had been pulling the rabbit out of the hat every single time. Every time there was an urgency or a crisis, which was like every day, people were quitting, the clients were yelling at us, there was never enough money in the bank. I'm bouncing 8 checks at a time, I'm bouncing payroll checks. And finally it came to where I wasn't going to make a payroll. I had 12 people at that time. There was just no way they were going to get paid. And I laid in bed that night and I realized I was going to lose it all. And for the first time in those 15 years, I asked myself, where did I go wrong? And I just laid there, and I was, remember, I'm just a physical and emotional wreck, and I was on Prozac and Ritalin. I was just just destroyed. and mentally destroyed. And I'm lying there at night, and I gave up on the business finally, and I just relaxed with that. And I never got a real answer to my question of where I went wrong. I just got a vision. And maybe I was dreaming, or maybe it was metaphysical or something. But what I saw was a table top with all the pieces of my business on the top of the table. And these weren't just pieces, these were systems. These were separate systems laid out on a table in front of me in this dream state I was in. And what I realized for the first time, and that's all that came to me, what I realized was my business, and instantly I recognized, since this was fundamental mechanics, my whole life was a collection of systems. It wasn't like what I refer to as an amorphous mass of sights, sounds, and events, which is the way most people look at life. Oh, it's so confusing. I'm barely keeping control, and it's relationships going bad, I think, or should I hire this person, and I don't have enough money, and this swirling mass of confusion. It stopped in that moment for me, and I realized my life was a collection of systems. And what I realized, the systems of my business, I had never seen before. And what am I talking about? How we answer the telephone, how we hire somebody, how we do a sales presentation. There are 300 systems in the business. How we make payroll, the phone system that we use. We're like here in the States called a 911. It's a 911. We handle emergency calls for doctors and for veterinarians and for funeral homes and so forth. So it's a 24/7 operation. And what I realized that night was it wasn't a confused mass of chaos, it was a collection of systems. And why couldn't I take one system at a time? As long as I'm seeing my life as a lot of different systems, why couldn't I fix each system permanently so it was so for instance, the person at the front desk answers the phone perfectly every single time. How do you do that? Well, you put your people together, you decide the best way to answer the phone, and sorry, boring but true, you document it, and you get everybody to go along with that. And why do they go along with it? Because they helped prepare the documentation. So we did that with every system in the business, and my 80 to 100 hour work weeks went to 2 hours, which is what I work now, and I make literally 20 times more than I used to make back then. And everything's calm and relaxed, and we're the best answering service in the country. And we have 2,000 competitors, and there's a half a dozen different statistical analysis I could give you to prove that to you. We don't make mistakes, and our people are long-term. They're paid double what they make anywhere else, and I'm at a 40% profit level on a really terrific gross. So 2 hours a week, and what I did was I saw that my life is a collection of systems, and now we're to this insight. And so most people see, oh, I have the business, I have the marriage, I have my health routine, I work out every day, or my diet is such and such. Well, instead of seeing this as a big mass, you see these as a collection of systems. Everyone is a system, and the only way to get a grip on things is to go through each system as if they were coming at you on a conveyor belt, and to perfect them one at a time. And as I laid in bed that night, what I thought would be true, what if I fixed every system in my business and made it perfect? And I knew immediately what the documentation would have to be, and there are 3 separate types of documentation. We can talk about that. I knew instantly what I needed to do. But what if I could make every one of those systems perfect? Would I have a perfect business? And I didn't know that for sure. It sounded logical. But what I can tell you after 12 years is, yes, that is true. If you have all the systems of your marriage or of your business or of your health regimen 98% perfect, you will have a 98% perfect health or relationship or business, which is, what I'm mostly involved in. And if all the parts are perfect, then they coalesce into a very holistic structure called your business, and it's making money and you don't have to be there. So it's a very non-holistic methodology to fix a business, but in the end it's tremendously holistic in the sense that all the parts are working together in a very, very Swiss watch type way. So that's it in a bundle, Dave.
I mean, you touched on this idea of these 3 documents. Maybe you can take us through those. I know you use the analogy relating them back to in the US, I think the Declaration of Independence, that might not speak as much to my audience because a lot's based here in Australia. But
Sure.
the three documents that you do have, maybe you can sort of take us through and explain how they work in the business.
Well, yeah, and what was interesting is I found this comparison to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and the rules of the land, the laws of the land. I found that after I wrote the book, and my wife pointed that out to me. So the point is, in any documented organization, there are three primary documents that are needed for the same reason our forefathers here in the U.S. had their three. I had my three, and here's what they are. One's called a strategic objective, and that is a single page, because I say it should be a single page. You don't want it to be too long. And that outlines who you are, where you're going, what you want to accomplish, generally how your marketing strategy would be, all the things about your business all on one page, and that guides everything. And you work it and you tweak it and you make it right, and it's never complete till maybe 6 months or a year. You keep working it. Oh yeah, this over here and that over there. So you have the strategic objective that everybody in the business understands and agrees with because they help create it. The leader, of course, has to be the mastermind behind it. And then the second set of documents are operating principles, and we have 30. One is do it now. Really, that's it. Do it now. And there's a number of other ones for what I call gray area decision making, areas where you don't have any definite guidance. So for instance, the do it now one is, so I have a new employee come in here and they say, well, I could do it next Thursday, this particular task, or I could do it today. And then they say, well, I see one of the principles is do it now. How come? And the reason is because that's what works best in most circumstances, is to not off. Take care of it now. Take care of it now. And it has to do with all of our communication. And I have the book here. I suppose I could read some other ones to you. But the point is, there are guidelines to making decisions. And then there's the working procedures. And this is where we spend 98% of our time. Once the strategic objective and the operating principles are down on paper, you just use them for reference. And even then, everybody knows what they are because they're so simple and so brief. But the working procedures are every process in your business. And remember, a business is like anything else mechanically. It's made up of separate systems. For instance, how we answer the phone at the front desk has nothing to do with whether the copying machine is working properly, which has nothing to do with the sales presentation, which has nothing to do with hiring somebody. They're all separate systems, and that's the beauty of it. That's the name of the book, Work the System. We work on those systems to perfect them, and yes, they are documented. And we don't have people walking around reading what to do next. It's nothing like that. But for instance, I keep going like that because that's the direction of the front desk from my office here. We have a 9-step process for answering the phone. And all of our people who answer the phone at the front desk sat down at a table years ago now, and we decided what the best way to answer the phone was, including the phrase we use, the comportment, put a smile on your face, because if you put a smile on your face, your voice will automatically perk up. But anyway, anybody who's answering the phone, whether they've got a hangover or not, no matter how they feel, answers the phone 98% perfectly, 98% of the time. And that's an encapsulation, Dave, of every process in here, including hiring people and how we answer the phone for the answering service in there, and how we do our books and everything else. We work on our systems to get the results we want. And if there's a profound thing I can say today, it's this. So your listeners should listen carefully. Most people go through life not seeing the systems that produce their results of their life. Every result in anybody's life was preceded by a system that worked up to it. First this happened, next this happened. I don't care if you're driving to work or your horrible relationship with your spouse or how you take care of the plants. It doesn't matter. Every result, as it is in this moment of time, which is all there is, Dave, is this moment in time, was preceded by a step-by-step process to get there. Most people don't see that. Most people are shuffling around the bad results of their life not understanding why it's so unfair and why things aren't going right. I'm working 100 hours a week. I should be doing better. Or why can't my sales guy do a better job, and this and that, and it goes on and on. Not understanding that every result, good or bad, was preceded by a system, a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-step process. People don't see that, and therefore they don't manage the processes. And I don't care who you are or what level of success you are, it's true. And the people who are in the top of their game, the Richard Bransons of the world, have intuitively understood they need to work on the systems that will produce the results they want. 9 out of 10 people don't get that. 9 out of 10 small businesses are mismanaged because they're just shuffling around. The leader is shuffling around bad results of unseen and therefore unmanaged systems. So what we want is we want to go down into the basement where the machinery is, these unseen systems. You're living in a single floor house, a single level house. You never understood there was a basement with machinery down there that's creating the results up on the first floor. I'm totally metaphorical here. The TV, the cat, the spouse, everything on the first floor is there because of this silent, invisible machinery that's down in the basement. And when you get this insight, what I call the systems mindset, you're going to go down the stairs into the basement and start working on the machinery to create the results you want up on the first floor. And metaphorically, as an image, that's the best I can do to illustrate what I'm talking about. So nobody in my business, I have about 30 people here, nobody in my business sees their life differently than that. Everybody here has bought into this, that we need to work the systems. And so if there's a problem in the business, we go back to the system and maybe tweak the system. We very seldom have a people problem here. And that's because we have a system for screening people and doing drug tests every so often and all that stuff. We always work on our systems. The results take care of themselves.
I quite like the idea because it gets you to start working on things where you're getting some lifetime value out of it. This idea of getting caught up in the day-to-day, putting out fires, as opposed to spending your time working on work that you do once that has lifetime of benefit. Kind of like you writing your book. It's written once, sure, you're going to continue to tweak and refine it, but now you're going to get a lifetime of value out of it. Interested to get your thoughts on how entrepreneurs get caught up and what they should be focusing on when they're in a business.
A lot of it is ego. For instance, when I was deep into my business was growing because the economy here was great and I was good at what I did. I could do all those things. But we get thinking we have to be in the middle of our businesses. We're the reason for the great success. And maybe we are. But you reach a point where if you disappear, your business is gone. It's not worth anything. You really have just created a job for yourself. But by the ego part, we become heroes to ourselves because we can fix the computer. We can hire somebody. We can do we're amazing, aren't we? We can do everything. But in doing that, you're looking at long, long work weeks and not really having a business that you could sell someday. The clever owner will find a way to pull out of the business into what I call, and you'll remember this, Dave, from the book, the outside and elevated positioning. They get outside the business and look down at it, and yes, they see themselves down there too, and make the business operate on its own. Because if the business doesn't operate on its own, you're never going to sell it. And you've just got a job. If you disappear and the business crumbles, it never was worth anything. So how do you extract yourself? You start realizing there are other people that can do what you do as well and probably better, whether it's fixing the computer, making the sales presentation, answering the phone, whatever it is, and you start to work yourself out of that. Richard Branson has what, 300 different businesses? How does he do that? Is he answering the phone at all of them? I don't think so. But he naturally understands how to delegate down. And so do the Rupert Murdochs and the leaders in our world, industry leaders. They understand that they need to delegate, and it all needs to be written down. Sorry. The big major difference between a large successful organization and a small struggling business is one word, and that's documentation. You need the documentation to get everybody on the same page. Bad pun. But you need everybody sharing what's expected, how to make decisions, and how to do different processes. You have to have that. It has to happen. Boring but true. I didn't want to do documentation, and I don't do any now, really. My staff does it. And it took me a few months to realize, to document my business, I didn't have to do it all. And I put a caution in the book, Dave, maybe you remember, but I said, don't make the mistake I did. If you're going to document your business, get somebody else to do it, and you okay the documentation. But you've got to get everybody understanding what their jobs are and what you want them to do, and then you pay them by performance. Man, I mean, that's a recipe to have a life of 2-hour work weeks and making more money than you need. And I've done it multiple times, and you know, if the viewers were to go to something we just finished yesterday, it's workthesystem.com is our website, but /testimonials. workthesystem.com/testimonials, and there's about 15 minutes of testimonials that go by on kind of a Star Wars thing to music. I'm really proud of it. My IT guy did it. It was really great. But we have literally thousands of testimonials of people who have taken this and applied it to their businesses or their lives and so forth. And it's like, as I said at the very beginning, Dave, it's fundamental mechanics. There's nothing mystical about it. It is just totally believable once you get that insight. And the first part of the 3-part book is dedicated to just getting the insight. And the last 2 parts are just the documentation and some odds and ends, helpful things. But once you get that vision of your life as a collection of systems, you've got it made. Most people don't get that. But I hope they do after they read my book.
Yeah. One thing that you just mentioned there was this idea of how simple they are, and they really are. It's like they're simple to put in place. I suppose it's simple to do, but it's also easy not to do as well. I'm just wondering, because you've got some other areas, like, I mean, you've got the academy where you go a little bit deeper. I am curious if there's any more to it, or is it literally just a matter of creating, as you see it, these 3 documents, and that's when everything else sort of starts to fall into place? Or how do you go deeper on it?
Well, you first have to get it, and this is what's pretty cool for a video like this, Dave. Is that people right this moment, wherever they're sitting, in their office or at home or whatever, look around and see the separate systems. Well, I like animated systems. I like a toaster more than I like a chair. I like things that do something. The microwave, the water coming out of the sink, the water system. Start to see your surroundings as a collection of the separate systems your surroundings truly are. And then once you get that, you start to see in your business that it's the same way. Whether you're working on your own and you're an internet marketer, or you have a little bricks and mortar business like I do, you can see there are separate systems. It just comes naturally that you could go through and fix those systems one at a time. And trust me on this, if you fix all the internal systems of your life and make them 98% perfect, your life will be 98% perfect. Sorry, it's just true, and I know it from the deepest core of me that that's true. So you got to get it, and then you've got to start seeing the separate systems, and the documentation part will come naturally. Obviously, that's what you do. Obviously, these separate systems of these people who work for me, for example, they're separate systems, they're people, I'm not turning them into robots, but they need to know what they're supposed to do, and you need to push them in that direction to go. And the best way to do it is to sit down with them and ask them their opinion. Why are you here? Let me give you some guidelines, but how can you help me achieve that goal for you? And so everybody has a job description, each department has a thrust, and every process has a way of doing it. Now listen, here's something I always have to throw in here. So you have this document about how to do some process, and let's say, excuse me, let's say there's 30 steps to it. Well, it sounds very regimented, doesn't it? And it is. You have to do it that way. However, if you have a better way of doing it, step 11 is really stupid, Sam, because this changed over here. We will change that document in an instant. So the way I say this is the process itself on paper is steel casting concrete until you have a better way of doing it. And then we change that process instantly. And I mean instantly. We'll have a meeting in the hallway and decide to do something a little different. Maybe run it through a couple of managers if it's important enough. And they'll go to the database and they'll pull up that procedure and change it instantly. We instantly connect with everybody and tell them we've changed this in this procedure. We're going to do it this way now. So it's, on the one hand, it sounds totally regimented, but on the other hand, it's totally free. It's kind of like the difference between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, in that Bill Gates is for open architecture with the computers, and Steve was just very adamant that he had control of the whole process. Well, guess what? They're both successful. And so that's what happens in your business. On the one hand, it's Steve Jobs, it's got to be this way, it's got to be nobody interfering. And on the other hand, we can change that instantly via the Bill Gates strategy of open architecture. So, and I didn't plan it that way. I just finished Steve Jobs' book, and so it just came to my head right now. But that's what you want. You want steel cast in concrete, but you've got to be able to transform it, like the Transformer movies, to transform from the car into this fighting machine instantly. And then everybody follows along, and the beauty of it is the beauty of it is this: the people who are doing the work create the processes, so they're very bought into it. They're very much into it. For me to write up all the processes and hand them down to everybody would never work. We all know it doesn't work. The government being the perfect example of inefficiency and dysfunction. People on high passing stuff down, and the people below are saying, how can I get out of doing that? Or how can I work the system in the traditional sense and take the best use of it? So that's how it works.
I think you just sort of really showed your stripes there, this idea that you are seeing the world in systems, because even when you're reading something new, a new book, it's like your mind is processing and thinking, well, as I've read this book about Steve Jobs, how does that fit into your model of the world? I mean, that just goes to show how deep this stuff's gone. I am curious, though, when it comes to documentation. I think a big area that a lot of people have trouble overcoming, like people who've already started to embrace systems, they've read E-Myth and some of these other books, is this over-documentation and having too many systems, and just, sometimes they just don't get any work done because they're waiting to get that perfect system and they're trying to get everything just right. I don't know if with the people you've worked with, how you've sort of addressed that issue.
We have a consulting arm. It's workthesystemconsultants.com, and we see that all the time. If you really get what I'm talking about, the separate systems, that won't happen. You've got the 3 documents. Remember, one document for general direction, one document for what we call gray area decision making, and then the processes, right? And if you see what you're trying to, if you see the world the way it is around you as a collection of systems, and you have these guidelines, you will automatically not over document. And it's in the book. Don't over document. You can get bogged down with too much documentation, and you'll start to understand. No, you'll instantly understand what needs to be documented and what doesn't. For instance, how we answer the phone at the front desk needs to be documented. How the janitor goes around and empties the waste paper baskets. Come on, give me a break. They can figure that out without writing it down. And I have people come back to me and they read the book and they say, I'm documenting everything in my home, how my wife does the dishes, how this, how that. And I'm saying, whoa, man, don't document your personal life. You need to document stuff that is going to be used by various people, and it's a little bit complicated, perhaps. Our billing procedure, you can't see all the way down through I've got these windows here behind me, but Teresa down in our billing department, her process for doing the billing, which we do once a month we have over 1,000 accounts. They have to be billed every month. They're all different places, all over the United States, mostly in Canada. It's 14 pages long. 14 pages, but she ruthlessly goes through it line by line. It's all in the proper sequence, and nothing is ever missed. We bill over $200,000 a month. I can't have her making a $6,000 mistake, because guess where that comes out of? That comes out of my 40%. And so for that, bam, 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 she follows it exactly, and every month that she does it, she's got changes, and she writes them in, the changes, the better ideas she has, or we don't need to do this anymore, in pencil. And when she's done doing the billing, she goes back to the database and updates it so it's all ready for the next billing. That is a perfect example of a complex system. She would not do it any other way. If I said do it another way, she wouldn't do it another way. It's the way we do it. As far as the phone goes, everybody knows how we answer the phone, exactly how to answer it, what phraseology to use, and what questions to ask. It is all documented, but they're not reading it every time they do it. So you get my drift here. You get a feel for what needs to be documented and what doesn't. We see businesses that say, and this is classic, well, we went to document our systems 2 years ago, and I don't know, we just stopped doing it after a while. Right, because you didn't get the purpose of it. You didn't see your business as a collection of systems. The boss said, do the documentation. Don't even start. I mean, don't even start, because you're going to take time away from your fire killing.
Yeah.
We don't fire kill here. Last quarter, we answered over 11,000. We processed 11,000 mostly urgent calls and had one reported error for every 11,562 something. We do these statistics every quarter. Our quality of service here is so near flawless as to be ridiculous, and that's why we charge a lot, and that's why I can pay a lot, and because everything is systemized. No fire killing.
Yeah. I think this idea of whenever you go to teach something as well, if you've got team members and you're showing them something, that's usually a really good time to do it, because it kind of then takes you out of having to show someone how to do something. But you don't need to show someone how to, take out the trash. You just say take out the rubbish, and it's kind of obvious. So I think one thing in the book you talked about was this idea of finding where the biggest fires are, and starting to put systems in place for those ones first, and then just not going too crazy. I think it's almost like focusing and doing one process and one system at a time, and then sort of move on to the next one.
One at a time, right? And people want to do 2 or 3 at a time, or they want to skip the initial documentation and jump ahead. One at a time, and remember that conveyor belt. So we all know, everybody's familiar with the 80-20 rule. You could take a dozen, let's say you've got 200 problems in your business. The first 10 are probably the bigger ones, and that's going to solve 80% of the turmoil. That's going to take away 80% of the turmoil. So once you get some practice with some smaller what we call working procedures, put them into place, see how they work, then you go after the big stuff. Our first procedure took us about 8 hours of total time over a 3-day period, my 2 managers and me. It solved a huge problem that we had. However, our next one solved a much, much bigger problem. It took us a month to put it together. And it wasn't 8 hours a day. We'd have meetings up at my house a couple times a week. We'd work 3 or 4 hours a day on it. And in a month, it was done. And I don't need to go into the detail, but it solved an enormous amount of problems. And then when we did, my wife Linda is the CFO for the company, and she worked with me on this project along with Holly, our operations manager. And we found a way to schedule our employees. Now remember, call traffic is different at different times of the day. It's real busy in the morning. At 2 in the morning, it's not busy. We need 12 TSRs, telephone service representatives, answering the phone on Saturday morning. We really only need 2 at 3 o'clock in the morning. And we were scheduling people to the best we thought. It was kind of a best guess. And so what I did, I said, no, we've got this equipment, this answering equipment. We can tell how many minutes a day we are handling calls. And some hours we'd handle 360 minutes of calls, simultaneous calls, 6 hours of calls, 12 TSRs handling those calls. And other times we might have 10 minutes of calls in a whole hour. So we took our statistics, we created a scheduling chart for our people to work, and we applied the statistics, so we knew we need 6 TSRs at this time to here. We need 2 here. We need 12 here. And we did it scientifically. Our payroll at that time was $60,000 a month. We knocked $10,000 put it on the bottom line in the snap of a finger. It took Linda 4 days to do that process. And we had to tweak a little bit, but I put $10,000 a month in my pocket with that one procedure. And tell me our listeners aren't empathizing with what I'm saying as far as efficiency and so forth. That's an extreme dollar figure, I understand. But nevertheless, it has to do with looking at that system of answering the phones, isolating it from everything else. We were scheduling people by when they wanted to work. Now we put blocks up, and depending on your seniority, you pick the block you want per week, 40 hours, and then you take it, and the next person's seniority takes what's left. We didn't lose anybody, and we became incredibly efficient. I put 10 grand a month in my pocket to this day. That was in 2006 when that happened. Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. That's just an illustration of what I'm talking about.
One of the systems that's probably key to get in place early on, someone who's listening to this, I think probably the first system, and it'll help right some of the wrongs that you made and had the lessons learned of putting a system in place for creating systems. I mean, you've worked with systems for a long time now. Like, what is the process or the system for creating systems?
Right. We have what we call a procedure for procedures. People always point that out. It's kind of funny. So I went 2 or 3 months creating all the procedures myself. I'm still in this, I need to do everything mode, in a sense. And then one day I realized that's ridiculous. We have these procedures. We want them laid out in a way they're all similar to each other. The same font, the same protocol. No matter what the system is, they really need to appear in a coherent form. For instance, chapter 2 of this book isn't in Chinese, and chapter 4 is in Portuguese. There has to be a similarity in the documentation and a similarity in format. So what I realized was I could make a procedure for procedures. And we have this master procedure template that everybody uses to create procedures. And then at that point, I didn't do them anymore. All I did was check the final. It took a few months, actually, to tweak here and tweak there, and a few minutes a day with my managers here to get it right. But everybody creates procedures according to the procedure for procedures. It sounds crazy, but it's what we do, and it works great.
And a procedure, I mean, to drill down into that procedure for procedure, because I know, like you said, a lot of people are interested in it. Are we talking, you have at the start of the system gives an overview of what needs to be done, then you go down to bullet points, or what's in a working procedure for you? Okay,
there's always, not always, if it's not real obvious what the procedure is for, there'll be a title for it and then a short narration, usually in italics. We're doing this because of this and this and this to avoid this problem here, and da-da-da. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, every system executes over this thing called time, which we all share. So you pick up the phone, you say this, step 2, step 3, step 4. 90% of all our procedures are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't do this Six Sigma stuff with the little colored red triangles and an arrow going over to the little rectangle and then things going. We don't do it that way. Everything is over time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's our procedure. That's how we do them. Anybody can do that. Anybody who can pull up Word on their computer can do that, or a spreadsheet if necessary. The other type, maybe 10%, are pure bullet point working procedures. And in fact, I pulled this up. The second document I talked about, Centratel's 30 principles, the operational principles, they don't have anything to do with each other, so they can be bullet pointed. I did number them, but that was arbitrary. Let me read a couple more of these. Complete means complete. Almost for tomorrow is not complete. In particular, this is germane to administrative staff's use of Outlook task functions. So we study to increase our skills, number 24. A steady diet of reading and contemplation is vital to personal development. It is a matter of self-discipline. And then I told you the one, do it now. And so the point is, that is sort of a working procedure in itself, but it's not in a 1, 2, 3 linear step across time. It's just broad guidelines. But 90% of them are in a 1, 2, 3, 4. Anybody who's watching this now could sit down and write up a procedure for answering the phone at the front desk, for instance. Could just do it.
So step one, I imagine, would be, if we're creating a system for creating systems, would be to get the person who is perhaps doing that task currently to use that format that you said, to document out the process that they're doing, and then for the ongoing refinement. Obviously, you mentioned about having a centralized database, which I think is key, that everybody can tap into. And then each time the process is done, they pull that procedure out, work it, and then see if anything else can be improved, make the amendments, and re-upload it into the central database.
Wow, you really did read the book. Good for you. Some hosts say they read the book, and I know they didn't by this point in an interview. Well, good for you. Thank you. That's flattering to me, Dave. Exactly. So you put it into use, and you tweak the heck out of it. And pretty soon, there's no tweaking to do anymore because it's 98% perfect.
Yeah.
And so this procedure for procedures, by the way, is one in the our procedure for procedures is in the appendix of this book. But that's what we did with that one and with every other one. We put it into play. You have the person who does the process write it up. They hand it up to the manager. You might bring a couple more people in that are affected by that, maybe a couple other managers. You go through it in a staff meeting. First this. No doubt somebody will say, well, we got to add this in here so we can double check that over there. And you do that for a few days typically, or maybe a week or two maybe. And pretty soon, everybody has contributed to that. Everybody agrees it's perfect. And believe me, everybody will follow it. What could be better than every process in your business being done perfectly 100% of the time? What could be better? And again, we go back to that thing. If your business is a collection of perfect systems, your business will be perfect. I operate a perfect business. 30 people. I'm way deep into the 1% of income earners here in the States, and I work 2 hours a week. That's a perfect business. Even if you hate what you do, you'd have to love that if you could make that happen for yourself. So what I've got is a money machine. And everybody here makes double what they make anywhere else, and our clients are really happy and willing to pay a lot of money for our service. And we're growing. We've grown through this horrible economic time all the way through. We're the best there is anywhere because all the individual systems have been tweaked, what I call tweaked to perfection through this process that you just described, Dave, of putting it into place and then making it better and better and better. And now we're back to the title of the book, Work the System. That's what we do here. We work the systems of the business. We don't worry about the results. The results take care of themselves. It's that simple, really.
That simplicity that's there, I know people sometimes have a tendency to want to overcomplicate things. I'm just imagining so let's say working with a work the system consultant, when you're actually working with them, their process then is really to take you through that and make sure that it's implemented. Is that, because at its core, and it seems blindingly obvious to someone listening to this, how much improvement that could have on your business, on your life, but by just documenting those, and it's a do it once and then get benefit from it from a very long time. Is there any other pieces to it, or literally that's it?
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a book. It's got thickness to it here, but it's all. Parts 2 and Part 3 are obvious when you read them. You say you'll be nodding your head. Part 1 is getting it. The getting it part. Some people have difficulty with that, seeing their lives and seeing reality in a different way. But it's profound. And you know what? You get. It is that simple. You get a respect for life and an appreciation of how beautiful life is, rather than thinking life sucks. Life is a beautiful thing. Our bodies. Look at our bodies, Dave. You're in Australia, man. And I'm up here in the northern hemisphere in Oregon, the state of Oregon in the U.S., and our bodies in these separate places, billions of cells, trillions of electrical signals, and this incredible internet thing allows us to talk. And all your people out there going to be watching this, it's an incredible miracle. Life becomes a miracle rather than a pain in the butt. And you look at your kids, and you look at your car, and you look at this going down the street, you really get an appreciation for the miracle that life really is. And I'm not being Pollyannish here. I'm not doing the big smiley face thing. It's really true. Life is an amazing thing when you can get to a place where you see it is truly logical and it's truly miraculous how all these incredibly complex systems can work. But most of us don't go through life that way. We go through banging through these bad results and not seeing the beauty that underlies the results, these systems that act to the laws, according to the laws of physics. If you set them up, they'll act the same way every time, just like software. And you get those routines going, you start to get a grip on your life, and you start to appreciate things, and it's a wonderful way to go through life. And I wasted 50 years of my life banging my head against the wall. It's been 12 years now I've had this viewpoint, and I'm so happy to be alive. My parents are 93 and 94 years old, and after this interview, I'll go visit both of them. And they both have their quirks at that age, but every day is a blessing they're still on the planet, and I thank God every day they're still on the planet. I have 2 surviving parents of that age. And you start to appreciate my 8-year-old Subaru out here in the parking lot. Linda, I just got her a new Audi A8, and boy, does she appreciate that. And you appreciate everything when you see how beautiful it is, and you finally realize you can get a grip on it and get what you want out of your life. And I have everything I want out of my life. I'm a real happy guy, as you can tell.
I think part of it as well, and you always see with very successful people and thought leaders, they've created enough space for themselves to think. And when you do that, I think that's when you really start to get that appreciation that you talked about, because you're not just so in it where you're running around frantically putting out fires and it's day in, day out, and as the entrepreneur, you know, there's no escaping it. It's not a 9 to 5, it's a 7-day-a-week all-consuming for a lot of people. So creating these systems gives you the opportunity to plug something in behind you so that you can move out of that, and that gives you new space and then gets you to think on different things. I think the biggest thing that someone who's listening to this, like this all makes intuitive sense, and I don't think there's anyone listening to it who could argue that it couldn't work. Like it makes so much sense. It's just one of those things. It's easy to do, but it's easy not to do. And it's in the title of your book. It's work the system. There's work involved in getting this up to that point. I don't know if there's any final words that you might be able to say to someone. I mean, you've probably already hit it so many times, but to get them to do that work, or at least to take that first step, what's probably one of the next things that they can do?
Well, the very first thing our viewers need to do, each one of our viewers, is even before trying to see the separate systems around the room or walking down the street, is to understand that there is an easy button in life. There is a way to instantly change your results. And it doesn't have to do with forming a new habit, or how good looking you might be with surgery, or how smart you are, or anything like that. It has to do with understanding how the world mechanically functions. And I have an engineering background. Truth is, every result in our lives is preceded by a system. And when you get that, there's the easy button. So once you get that, the rest is all mechanical. And yeah, there is some work to do. Work the system. At first, there's some what we call heavy lifting. It has to happen, but it doesn't last long, and suddenly the 80-hour weeks are down to 60 and 40 and on down, and by that time you've really got a grip on things, and the world is a piece of cake at that point.
It's funny, you mentioned this idea of habits, and I mean, you can always look at things in different ways. The thing that popped into my mind when you said that, it's like creating these systems are almost like forced habits, because you've decided how you're going to react when certain things happen. So it's like a predefined set of criteria when you go, this happens, then follow this procedure, which I've thought through previously so I don't have to think about it on the fly.
Yeah, exactly. And here's a good example of that. So I'm sitting here, I'm a little thirsty, and I have this cup over here. See, sitting on my desk. And it becomes so natural, Dave. It's like, so I'm sitting here, I've just talked for 3 minutes, I'm thirsty. I reach over and get the cup and take a drink. That's how I know my arm is going to reach over and grab that cup and put it up to my lips and drink without even thinking about it. That's what you're alluding to. It becomes so natural that you just know what to do. But you've got to get that insight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have anything to do with whatever religion you're in, or whether you're a vegetarian or a conservative or a liberal. This has nothing to do with this. This has to do with mechanical functioning. The mechanical functioning of my arm going over here to pick this up and put it here, that's what this viewpoint will do for every moment of your day. So it's a very spiritual thing, actually, but it's rooted in pure mechanics and logic, and it's very easy to understand once you get it. Yeah. So good.
Well, in the tail end, I mean, I very much enjoyed this book. It really spoke well to me, and I think a lot of business owners are going to get a lot out of it. They need to get themselves a copy of Work the System, and they can get that from workthesystem.com. If they want to find out anything more, is that the best place to go? If they want to find out more about what you do, Sam?
Right. Go to workthesystem.com, and one of the post that's up there, I do a post every 1, 2, or 3 weeks. And I've left this one up a long time because it's one of my favorite posts I've ever done, and it's called Clustering. Read the post while you're there. I think it's kind of fun and profound, actually. And then if you want a copy of the PDF, click up in the corner. It says "Get your free copy of the book," and you'll go to what's called Work the System Academy. And we have a product that takes the book to a deeper level for somebody who really wants to transform their business and they want more than what's in the book. There's a relatively low-priced product, online product that we spent over a year producing that you can get. But in getting over there, you can download the book, and then if you'll share the website with your Facebook friends or some of your other friends or some of the other social media, you can download the audio of the book too, as read by me. If you want to buy the hardcover, and it is hardcover. There's no soft covers. I don't do soft covers. You can go to Amazon. You can buy it off workthesystem.com, or you can go to your bookstore and find it. That's the hardcover. But the rest of it is free. It's all free.
Yeah, I really love what you're doing, and I think it's great to see now that Sam's freed himself up. I mean, you can find out more about it on the website, but he's starting to give back as well, and I think that's what it's all about. So thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous, and remember, guys, if you want to find out more, head over to Work the System, and no doubt we'll talk again as well, Sam. Thanks for your time.
Dave, thanks for being such a great host. I appreciate that more than you know. Talk to you later.